Hello my friends, and welcome to our second community knit along. This time we're gonna make an everyday tee, a top that I'm wearing right now. The pattern provides instructions for 18 sizes, from a toddler size to curvy women's sizes. I'll be making this top right here in my studio, recording every step of the process, as well as numerous tips, ideas and suggestions that I will come up with while working on my own version of the everyday tee. I want this knit along to feel as if we were knitting together in a small group, just sharing ideas and enjoying the process of knitting. To make it a two-way conversation, I strongly encourage you to leave your comments, questions, suggestions, tips down below in the comments section. To join in, you will need cotton yarn, you will need 2 sets of circular needles in size 5mm US size 8, you will need 2 stitch markers, a wool needle, scissors, measuring tape, and a crochet hook that is about 3mm thick. The yarn yardage requirements and the full list of the supplies are available at the pattern page at 10roseaday.com/everyday-tee. The knit along is divided into 4 parts, with each part being a bit more challenging than the previous one. This way we'll ease into the project gradually, and even if this top is your first sweater project ever, you won't get overwhelmed. In the first part of the knit along, we will cast on stitches, work on the edging, and then work in the color pattern until we finish the body of the top, just as it is instructed in step 1 of the pattern. The first step of the pattern tells us to cast on stitches. No surprise there, right? Use the yarn in the main color, for me it's navy blue right here, and any type of cast on that forms a firm edge. So you can use the long tail cast on, or a knit on cast on, or cable cast on, any type that you like, but make sure it forms a firm edge. We don't need a flimsy edge here. So I'll use the long tail cast on, and usually when I have to measure the long tail, I simply measure the length between my fingers and the elbow, and I know that this length should be about right for casting on 30 stitches. So for the size I'm making, it's going to be a toddler size. I need to cast on 128 stitches, so I'm going to measure about 4 times this length, and I know this tail should be enough to cast on stitches for this top. Of course, the number of stitches to cast on will be different for every size, so follow the pattern instructions, step 1.1, to see the number of stitches you need to cast on for the size you are making. So I'm done with the figuring out the length of the tail, and now I place this tail on the thumb, and then I place the working yarn on my index finger, hold both strands, take the needle, and cast on stitches using the good old long tail cast on. 26, 27, 28. Okay, now I have all stitches I need for the project. I have all 128 stitches, and your number will be different if you're making a different size. And if you're making this top in any of the adult sizes, you will have enough stitches to spread on one 60mm 24-inch circular needle. But I don't have enough stitches. See, I don't have enough stitches to spread on the needle, and let alone comfortably work with those stitches, right? So I need to work with 2 circular needles right away. Of course, we can use a shorter circular needle, but because we'll use 2 circular needles in this project anyways, then it makes sense to just start using them right away if you're making a smaller size and you don't have enough stitches. If you have enough stitches to spread around the needle, then simply skip this step. But I need that step because I need to start working somehow. So what do? You can either, there are 2 ways basically. You can either split stitches in half and work on 2 circular needles using the classic way, when we assign 1 needle to one half of the stitches and the other needle to the other half of the stitches, but I prefer to use kind of an alternative way, which is I find it easier, so I'm going to use that way. And because I'm going to get another needle right now, and because I prefer to join stitches for working in the round, again, you don't have to, it will look nice even without joining, but I usually do join them, so I know that I will need one stitch from this end for joining stitches in the round. So I'm going to slip this stitch. I'm kind of doing a bit of a preparation. I'm going to slip this stitch onto the other circular needle and leave it there. It's going to get big because it's still attached to the working yarn. And then I move the rest of the stitches to the other tip of that needle, just like this. And see, I'm holding this loose stitch because I don't really want it to be too big. So I'm moving these stitches to the other tip of the needle, and I have enough stitches to work in a circle like this, but I can't do it on the same needle. That's why I need this additional needle. And like I said, I prefer to join stitches for working in the round, so I'm gonna move this loose stitch to the tip of a needle, of the other needle. Looks a bit messy right now, but it's not really that hard, and it's just for one little step. And again, it's you won't have to do it if you're making it in a bigger size, if you're making the stop in a bigger size. Okay, so here's the setup. I make sure that all my stitches are even and nice. They're not twisted around the needle like this. And the best way to ensure that it's not the case is to arrange the stitches so that the cast on edge is looking inwards, and then you can tell exactly whether the stitches are twisted or not. So mine are not twisted, and I'm ready to start working on this project. So I'm gonna find my working yarn because I don't want to start working with the tail. It happened to me a few times, and you know what, it's not good. I'm gonna tell you it's not good. And I'm gonna still make this loose stitch a bit tighter. And now we're gonna join stitches in the round. You can skip this step, but I prefer to join them. And I usually do it by crossing the first and the last stitch. So I'm gonna slip the first stitch from the left needle to the right needle, like this. And then I'm gonna insert the tip of the left needle into the second stitch on the right needle. That's gonna be that loose stitch. And I'm gonna cross these stitches, pass one over the other, but don't drop them. That's the key. We don't drop the stitches. We need both of them on the needles because we cast on the number of stitches that we need to the project. If we drop one of these stitches, then we won't have enough stitches. And now we place a marker to mark the beginning of the round, just like this. Okay, now we are ready to start working on the project, and the first 4 rounds will be worked in 1 by 1 ribbing. That means that we're gonna knit 1 stitch and we're gonna purl 1 stitch, knit 1 stitch and purl 1 stitch, and we do it until we get to the end of the round, and then for 3 more rounds. I'm gonna show you how to rearrange the needles when we get to the end of the round. So if you're making the stop in a small size like I do, then you won't have any trouble actually figuring out the setup with the needles. But for now, we simply knit 1 stitch and purl 1 stitch. And just a few more stitches, knit, purl, knit, purl. This is my last knit, and my last stitch would be on the other needle. This is the stitch that we crossed, remember? So now one of my needles is empty, and that's good. And I simply move all stitches to the other tip of this needle, the one that is active, so to say, right now. Simply just slide them to the other tip of the needle. It helps to double check, just in case. I'm going to remove the tail. It helps to double check that the stitches are still not twisted just keep an eye on that for just after this first round, because sometimes we could accidentally twist stitches while we work the first round. It happens. So make sure the stitches are still not twisted. And now I take this empty needle in my right hand and I continue working, purling my last stitch, the last stitch of this round. And oops, almost here. Remember about the tension, right? So I'm purling this last stitch and I pull the yarn a bit just to make sure that the stitches, there is no gap between these two stitches. And slip the stitch marker from the left needle to the right needle. And that was the first round, and we're gonna work 3 more rounds like that in simple knit 1, purl 1 ribbing. So we knit 1 stitch, purl 1 stitch, and we do it for 3 more rounds, 4 rounds altogether. And that number is the same for all sizes. Now that we've got some body of the project, even a few rounds, it's still easier to manipulate with the stitches, and now you can see how it behaves, like the project itself, and it's easier to deal with it even with 2 circular needles. So I'm making the last stitch of the round, and now I slip the stitch marker. And these are my 4 rounds of ribbing. If you're not sure how many rounds you made, simply take a look at any column of purls here in between the knits. You should have 4 of them, not counting the cast on edge. See, if right here I have 1, 2, 3, and the 4th one is right underneath the needle. So if you make 5 rounds accidentally, it's not really a big deal, no need to go back and undo it, but it's better to have 4 rounds because that's what the pattern tells us to have. And now we're gonna work in the color stripe pattern. What does that mean? We're gonna alternate wide stripe made in main color, the navy blue for me, with a narrow stripe made in a contrasting color. You can choose any contrasting color you like. I'm going to use a white because I like how contrasting basically it is. So how does this color pattern work? First of all, we're gonna work on the white stripe first. So we use the yarn in the main color, the same yarn that we've been using so far, to simply knit all stitches in every round for a certain number of rounds. And for every size, this number is different. Not for every size, but for groups of sizes at least, especially for kids sizes, the number is different. For me, it's going to be 9 rounds, but it could be 8, 10, 11, or 13 rounds, depending on the size you're making. So we simply knit all stitches, no ribbing anymore, simply knit stitch by stitch, every stitch in every round for the number of rounds that is outlined in step 1.4 of the pattern. For me, it's going to be 9 rounds, so I'm going to do quite a bit of knitting here. And this was the last round of my first white stripe. So I slipped the marker to make it official. I finished this round, and now we're going to make a narrow stripe. First of all, if you are not sure how many rounds you made, you can either use a row counter, which is helpful, or you can simply count the bumps on the wrong side of the work, and it's better to count them at the section that sits on the cable of the needle. This way you would know for sure, because sometimes on the needle itself, these 2 rounds, they get kind of jammed together, and you might think that you made, let's say, 10 rounds, but in reality you made 11. So I learned that lesson the hard way. So now I know that it is better to count rounds, the section that sits on the cable of the needle. So simply count the bumps over here, and you would know how many rounds you knit. Now back to the narrow stripe. Now we are gonna introduce the contrasting color yarn. So at the beginning of the round, we're gonna tie the contrasting color yarn to the working yarn, and I usually do it with a simple knot, nothing sophisticated at all. Leave a tail long enough to weave in later on, otherwise it shouldn't be really long. And then move this knot as close to the bottom of the last stitch as possible, just like this. See, it is sitting pretty close. And then we work one round using the yarn in the contrasting color. At this time, the yarn in the main color is kind of on vacation, so it just sits there. We are not cutting it, we leave it there, but for this round, we're gonna use a yarn in a contrasting color. So we simply knit all stitches for one round using this new yarn. And here's the last stitch of my first round worked in the contrasting color. So at the beginning of the second round, we're gonna do something interesting, and we do it to make sure we don't get a jog, because if we don't do nothing, then we would have, at this spot, we would have kind of like a step where the color changes. And we want the stripes to look seamless. I mean, so that no one ever guesses, right, where we changed the color. That would look more professional and way neater than the step case. And for that reason, we're gonna do something interesting right now at the beginning of the second round worked in the contrasting color. So we insert the tip of the right needle from back to front under the top part of the stitch that is below the first stitch on the left needle. That's going to be the stitch, this guy, it's going to be the stitch in the main color. And we place that stitch on the left needle like this. See, now we have two stitches here. And now we knit these two stitches together using the yarn in the contrasting color like this. And then we work the rest of the stitches to the end of the round with the contrasting color yarn to finish the second round of the stripe. When we finish the second round worked with the contrasting color, slip the stitch marker from the left needle to the right needle and then knit one more stitch for the same reason, to make sure there is no jog between the colors. And now we can confidently cut the yarn in the contrasting color, leaving a small tail, and pick up the main color and repeat the same steps, making another set of stripes, one wide stripe and one narrow stripe. And we'll do it as many times as is instructed in the pattern on page 6. Depending on the size you're making, you're gonna do it from 4 to 7 times. So in my case, it's going to be 4 times. So I'm going to repeat these steps, wide stripe, narrow stripe, until I make 4 narrow stripes. Until then, I'll keep knitting and knitting and knitting. Here's one more thing that you can do to improve the look of the stripes. The raised stitch that we did over here will take care of the jog that happens between the colors. So when the color changes, there will be no jog. But if you want to make the stripes impeccable and you're willing to make an extra effort, then you can do the same raised stitch after the first round of working with the main color. And it's not just the first round. As you see, I finished the round, I slipped the stitch marker, and then I knit one stitch with the main color, and that means that I worked all stitches in a contrasting color. So now I don't have any stitches in a contrasting color on the needles, and that's when I'm gonna make, I mean, you don't have to, like I said, but that will also add to the better look of the stripe. So you can lift that stitch and then knit these two stitches together and then continue working in the main color, finishing the wide stripe and then making the narrow stripe and so on and so forth. So this is just a little way to improve the look if you're willing, like I said, to make an extra effort. Otherwise, you don't have to do it. It's just a small improvement that is totally optional. And this was the last stitch of the last round of my last narrow stripe. So I slipped the stitch marker from the left needle to the right needle, and I'm done working in the color pattern. I have 4 narrow stripes, just as the pattern instructed, and now I can cut the yarn in the contrasting color and put it aside. We will get back to that yarn in the last part of the knit along, but until then we're gonna keep working with the main color. So we pick up the main color. One more thing, because I'm making this top in a small size, I'm still working from the same ball of yarn, so I didn't need to attach a new ball of yarn. But if you're making this top in a bigger size, then most likely at some point you will need to attach the new ball of yarn. So what I want to say is that try to attach it either at the beginning of the round or at a spot that is halfway through, so somewhere over here, because these are the two places that would be at the sides of the body, and that's usually less visible. If you can see a knot or something goes not perfectly well, then at least it won't be in the very front or very back of the top. So try to attach a new ball of yarn at the sides. And now that we finished the color stripe, we still need to work until the body is as long as it should be for the size we are making. In my case, the body should be 20 centimeters long. That's 7 3/4 of an inch. So let's see how long it is now. So I would use a measuring tape, and I align the 0 mark on the measuring tape with the bottom of the top, the cast on edge, and then I measure the work up to the what's underneath the needle. So don't measure the needle, don't measure those stitches on the needle, just measure whatever is underneath the needle. And from what I can see, I still have about 1 centimeter or so to work. And it would be simple knitting, same way as we did when we were just making stripes. It's kind of like another stripe, but not really in a stripy pattern. It's just the yarn in the main color, and we knit all stitches in every round until we get to that measurement, until the body of the top is as long as it should be. And you can see, of course, the length will be different for all sizes, and you can see the length for your size in step 1.5 on page 6 of the pattern. Okay, I've just worked 4 more rounds, and I think this length should bring me to the 20 centimeters that I need and the total length of the body of the top. But before we measure it, I want to mention something. I'm gonna put this stitch marker away so you could better see it. I want to mention something that I've just noticed. If you look at the work, I'll pull the tail a bit so you could again better see it. So if we look at the work, you will see that this stitch is just 1 round tall, right? While the rest of the stitches in that stripe all have 2 rounds. So you can tell there are 2 rounds here, but just 1 round here. What it means? It means that when I was so happy that I finished the color pattern and I was in such a hurry to cut the yarn in the contrasting color, I forgot to knit 1 more stitch with the contrasting color like we do, like it is instructed in step 1.4.7. So I completely forgot to do that, and that's the result. I've got a stitch that looks different, and my stripe, this stripe, is not perfect at all. So it's not really ugly, it's not a big deal, especially if it is the last stripe and it's gonna stay in the underarm area anyways. So I'm not gonna do anything about it, but it is another reminder that we have to follow the pattern and we have to be careful about that. Okay, now that we figured out that, let's see how long is my top right now. So I take the measuring tape, again I align 0 with the cast on edge, and then I see how long it is. Oh, okay, it's even over 20 centimeters, which is great. You know, it's a top for a toddler, and you know toddlers grow fast, so no harm there. If you want to make the top longer, then work more rounds. If you want to make it shorter, you can stop right after you finish the last narrow stripe. Another way to adjust the length of the top is to adjust the number of rounds in each wide stripe. So for example, I have 9 rounds here. If I worked 10 rounds in each stripe, then my top would be longer. And if I worked, for example, 8 rounds in each stripe, then it will be shorter. So that's a simple way how you can adjust the length of the top. There is something else that you can adjust, actually quite a few things, because this top is highly customizable. So you can truly make it a one-of-a-kind creation that will look exactly like you want it to look. First of all, you can skip making the stripes altogether. You can just make it plain in one solid color. Or you can choose a different stripy pattern. You can make it, let's say, 2 round stripes all the way across the body of the top. Or you can make it in solid color, but if you still want to add stripes, you can make it with the garter stitch. So let's say instead of making 2 rounds in contrasting color, you can work 4 rounds in garter stitch, and you will have 2 garter ridges instead of 2 rows of contrasting color. So there are so many options that you can use, and each top that you make could be different, and you can even experiment with different stitch patterns. Basically, the sky is the limit. But for now, the body of this top is finished, and we are ready to move on to shaping the sleeves, but we'll do it in the next part of this knit along. Well, that's it for now. In the second part of the knit along, we'll shape the sleeves and finish the back of the top. I will also explain how to make the sleeves a bit longer if you prefer to have your upper arms covered. Thank you for watching this video and have a wonderful week. I'll see you in the next tutorial.